Oh, excuse me. Okay, one of the basic concepts of how to move information from one machine to the next. And computer networks today, they use either of two concepts. One is called the datagram switching technique, and one is called the virtual circuit switching techniques. So you're aware of those or not? So I'll briefly go through them. But before I talk about the virtual circuits, then I'll talk about the older circuit switching technique. But you need to be aware of those guys. You need to understand those. You could be asked about them. So this is communication or computer switching or data switching techniques used in networks. I'm going to mention the first one, which is known as the that's not good. Okay, zoom in or zoom out? Zoom out, I guess. Okay. Pardon?
You said to remind you to start the recording.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I think I did. Yeah, I started it. Thank you for reminding me though, it's good. Sometimes I didn't need it, but probably when I needed it, that's when you don't remind me. No, do that, please, thank you. Right, so the first one I'm going to talk about is something called message switching technique. And there's another technique called the circuit switching technique. I probably mentioned this first. Circuit switching. Number two, circuit switching. This is the first way of moving data around the world, and that's using the telephone networks. So just relax. I'll put the notes on Moodle later on. So just get the idea right. This is how old telephones used to communicate. They used the technique that later became to be known as the circuit switching. And the idea is that if you have in any street, in any town or city, a number of streets, and every street there's a house, in every house they used to have phones, right? So imagine in this street there are a number of phones, there's another street in town, there's another, more phones around there, and so on. And there's a phone there, this guy here wants to communicate with that guy at the other end of the city. Now the way telephone network is built is at the end or at the top or in the middle of every street, there's a box, and we call it the junction box or the switching box. And that's your phone, or every phone from each house has a pair of wires that connects it to that box. So all the neighbors' phones, they all connect to the same box. And eventually, this box is also connected to a few other boxes in town or in the city with a pair of wires. And this box is also connected to a few others. And some boxes are connected to more. That box is probably connected to that and that, and then this one. And then eventually there's another box in this street that connects all these phones together. Well, into the box, so not together. And then they're connected to this one, and so on. So let's say, all the phones in a city are connected together, and in a town, and every country, and every around the world. It was one of the biggest telephone networks, or one of the biggest networks in the world, communication networks. So now, if this phone was to call this phone from this house to that house, so this guy used to start dialing the number. So they cannot pick up the phone and start talking. Or if it's a computer here and a computer here, they cannot pick up the phone and start sending data. So they first must establish something. The actual communication consists of three parts. One is called the call setup. That means you must establish a link with the other side, with the other party. Just as we still use phones now. You can't pick up your phone and say, hey, darling, what are you doing? No, your wife or your other partner, whatever. So you must first call them first. and wait until they answer the phone. And that's when you say, okay, the call is established now, or the link is established. That's called the call setup phase. So all circuit switching techniques consist of 3 phases. The first one is called call setup. The second phase is the data transfer. So how does that work now on the old phones, on phones even today, but on the old phones? The phone starts dialing this number. The numbers go into as electric signals to this junction box. This junction box have switches, connecting switches. Switches are just like discs that rotate around to, for example, if there's a link coming here and touching this, it keeps rotating until it connects it based on the number that was dialed. So it can connect it to this side, or it can connect it to that number or that number. So here there's a rotor, a rotary disc, and there's to be dozens of them, one on top of the other. But anyway, so it will connect it to either one of these other wires. That's all it does. So let's imagine it recognizes that this is the wire that it connected to. So somewhere here, there's a switch that will connect that call to this wire. And the electricity flows into this box now that also has a rotary, and it checks the signal starts rotating the disc in there and connects it maybe to this one. So as you can see, a pair of wires are now connected all over. You get to this point, the switch probably connected to many other boxes, but it'll pick this one here to connect it. Eventually this one here will find, okay, what's the last number? It's that one there, and there it is connected. Now that phone is connected in one electric circuit. That's why they call this the circuit switching. You actually form a circuit, a real electric circuit that connects of 2 wires. The electricity goes and comes back from this phone to that phone. And the moment that phone gets that electricity, it energizes the bell that rings, and that's your call is coming up. And it will keep ringing until either this guy hangs up or this one picks up the phone. So until, for example, still on the phones today, you accept the call. So once you accept the call, now we say that first part is done. That's the call has been established. Now you can talk. Or if it's a computer, now you can start sending data. And you keep sending data. And remember, this is like a real electric circuit. It's not virtual, it's real. It's a real electric flow in between those two. And something else, problem with this one, if that wire breaks or goes loose, the whole call is terminated. You don't just reconnect it, and no, once it's disconnected, the whole thing falls apart. So, and also something else, later on they introduced that you can multiplexing, that you can line up many calls in one wire. But initially, one wire carries only one call. So let's just look at the basics of it before it became, more efficient. It wasn't as efficient, but let's say, just for now, even with multiplexing, the number who can share it is limited. But let's say now there's one call is going through this wire. Now, if somebody else was to make another call to another number, but has to use this wire, it will get a busy signal. You're not allowed to send multiple calls on one wire. So that's the basic. I know eventually they introduced multiplexing, but in the older days, you want to call somebody in a village somewhere outside a city, it depends on how many wires connect in that village. So there could be 200 phones in the village, but there's only one wire. That means at any time, there's only one call that can be accommodated. Right, but this is called circuit switching. This is the old way. We've been communicating like this for 140 years now, maybe 150 years. That's how phone work, very basically, of course. Now, when you finish the call, you must do something else, and it's called call clear, or terminate the call. So these are the 3 phases of circuit switching. Anytime you hear the word circuit switching, think of those 3 steps. You must establish a link or call clear, send the data, and clear the call. Now, why do you clear the call? Once you clear the call, either side can clear the call, by the way. Once you hang up, then this will go back to normal, position, whatever, free, and this switch will also, all these switches will become free, the wires become available for any other call. So what's the advantage of this? First, When you get the line, it's dedicated to you. So it's a dedicated line. It's not shared, except later on when they started multiplexing, but it's not shareable. Is it better to have a shared line? Are shared lines better, or dedicated lines are better? Networks that use shared lines or links, or networks that use dedicated links? Anybody can give me any ideas?
It depends.
Yes, give me, it depends on what, very good, yeah. That's half the mark you got. Now give me a good reason, which one is better? When is it better to have dedicated link? Or what's the advantage of dedicated link? Or a shared link? Yeah.
Myself again?
Pardon?
Myself again?
Well, I was aiming behind you, but
Sorry.
it's okay.
Sorry.
Does anybody have any reason which is it better to have shared links if you are given an option? Hey, there's a cable coming to your house with internet. Would you like a dedicated link or a shared link? What would you pick? Dedicated. Why?
Dedicated.
Why?
You have all the bandwidth that's available on it.
Exactly. If nobody is sharing the link with you, it's only for you, dedicated to you, then the full capacity of that link, if that link can deliver 10 million bits a second or bytes, then it's all yours. If you share it with 2 people, you're only going to have half the speed. If you share it with 1,000 people, you're going to have 1,000th of the speed if all 1,000 people use it at the same time. So dedicated ones, right? Which one is better, the dedicated or the shared? The dedicated. It's a good answer, but it's not the right answer. Only for speed, performance, yes, the dedicated is better. But sometimes the shared one is better. Why? When is the shared line? When would you choose the shared line? When would you recommend it to your company?
Cheaper?
Yes, exactly. Cost is very important, guys. Don't forget it. We know performance is better with dedicated link, but if they're so expensive, these leased lines, they cost 150,000 euros to a company. Like if a company says, okay, I wanted a leased phone line for myself, I don't want anybody else using it, they'd give it to you, it's available. This costs you 150,000 a year, or maybe once, I don't know. But if you want a shared one, it's probably cost you 150 euros, not 1,000, a month or a year. Okay, so there's a big difference in cost, but there's big difference in quality of service. Right. The other thing about this, if this link breaks and rejoins again, you don't continue your call. Your call is terminated. You must go through the process of starting your call again. So this is the way telephone systems worked a long time ago. Now, let me talk now about when the computer started, about 50, 60 years ago. Computer started, and then they started talking together. They decided, okay, how are we going to communicate? So they started with real basic stuff. They didn't use the networks first. They said, right, they used a technique called message switching technique. I want to send a file or a message to another site. I take the full message, get a transmitter on my computer, and start transmitting it to the nearest machine. Let's say I want to send it from Dublin to, I don't know, Bulgaria or somewhere, or Rome. So I send it to London, from London I'll send it to Paris, Paris to Rome. That's how we're going to transmit. So we get machines that have transmitters, wireless transmitters or wire transmitters, and receivers at the other end. We start sending the file. The file is sent to the nearest machine until it's fully received. And the file can be large, so you can't just keep it in your main memory, especially 50 years ago, they had very little memory. So you need a storage device, storage like hard disk. Even 50 years ago, they didn't have hard disk, they had tapes. So they used to copy it onto the tape. But then even when they introduced hard disk, they started using hard disks here. So you send the entire file, save it here. And then when it's fully saved, you say thank you, and you start then connecting with the next one and transmitting, and this one receives it and also saves it here, and then sending it from here to there. So this is called message switching technique. That's how computers started communicating. How good is this technique? Any observations? Performance-wise, speed, pardon? It looks very slow. In fact, yes, it will take hours actually to transfer, especially depending on the size of the file, all the way from here to there, to there, to there. And remember, if something goes wrong with transmitting the last byte of the file, then they say, oh, I discovered an error. Can you please retransmit it again? And they send it again, they start again the process. So it can be very, very slow. But that's how they actually started communicating. Now, let me get, how did they develop it later on? There was a big kind of competition between computer companies, oriented companies, and the old telephone, and the telephone companies. Telephone companies wanted their business, but they wanted to have it their own way, and the computer companies weren't ready to give their business, so they wanted to develop their own technique. And they did eventually, they developed their own technique. They improved the message switching technique. How did they improve it? What's the problem with this technique? They said the biggest problem with this is that anything you send over into an external storage device, it's very, very slow. It's best to use main memory, because if you send information to main memory and main memory sends it to main memory, it's like me telling you something, you tell it to the next person and talking. Instead of me reading it and you're writing a piece of paper and then you do the same thing and the other person writes it on a piece of paper. But of course he can't remember everything because memory is limited, especially in those old days. You can't send big message into memory that flows from one memory of a computer to another, from one router to the next. So, because memory was small, they said we should never send big messages. What do? We break messages into smaller messages. So every message to be sent is broken into smaller units. We call them datagrams. In the old days, they used to have something, the post office used to have something called telegram. When you write short words and they charge you per the character or the word. So instead they said, this is now we are into data, so they called it datagram. So take a file, break it into small units. And let me use another one. So they call this the datagram switching technique. So this technique is used today in today's computers, in today's networks and communication. So, for example, from one router to the next, this is how the world is connected, many routers, and each router has many devices on it, or networks, or sub-networks, or smaller networks. But now if this machine wants to communicate with that machine, on the datagram switching technique, this is how it works. You take the message, you break it into smaller units. On each part of a message that we call datagram, you put a header on it. Header is more space. When you write the address, source address, destination address, source address, destination address, on each and every packet, on each and every datagram. And also, for the receiver to receive those packets and put them together, you need to have something else called the sequence number. So this is packet number 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So now, every packet or datagram has a header, and the header has lots of information. But the minimum part of the information, the source who's sending it, that's an IP address, destination address, IP address, and the sequence number. And all we do, our computer here will send it to the router. So the router opens the packet. This is what happens now to every packet that's sent. It opens the packet, the header, and says, oh, it never looks at the source address. Every router only looks at the destination address. That's why many people, attackers, when they want to attack, and they don't want anybody to know where the packet came from, they falsify the source address. You can actually change it, and you send it from your machine, but it carries another IP address. So eventually, nobody can know where did that packet came from, but that's not now our, business. Now, what we want to know is that every packet now, still to today, holds at least the source address, destination address, and the sequence number, and we give them to the first router. This router has option, can send it that way or this way. This is how datagram works. That's how the internet works. This router says, this line is faster, this one is busy, so I'm going to send packet number 1 this way, 2 number this way, and then this line was busy. Maybe it became free a few seconds later, a few minutes later. You say, oh, this one is faster, now I'm going to send number 3 this way, number 4 this way. And then this guy here will forward maybe packet number 1 that way, maybe that has some delay, might send packet number 2 this way. This guy's forward packet number 3 and 4. Packets are independent. They flow independently. Every packet has its own packet, its own full information that's needed to be routed by a router. It's the nearest thing to datagram is the postal system. When you send, for example, post to somebody in India, you just write the address and who is it from, who is it going to, and if you want to send your friend like lots of documents, you say this is document number 1, 2, means nothing to the post office, just to your friend at the end. That's like the sequence numbers, and you post them and we deliver them. Of course, if there is a direct link to India flight, they put it on that flight, but there isn't. So what they do, they put it on any flight going towards India. So they put it on the flight to London, and from London they look at it again and they say, oh, we better send it that way to Rome, and then from Rome they might send it to Dubai. Dubai, they say, oh yeah, we have a direct flight to India, put it on. And if that day there's no flight to India, they probably put in a flight to Pakistan or somewhere and then to India. So the point is packets can go in different routes, but ultimately they're all directed to the final destination. That's how datagram works, and this is the technique that's in use today on the internet. That's how all datagram networks work, and the internet uses datagram techniques. All right, eventually it gets there. When it gets there, hopefully the receiver will be able to see the sequence numbers 1, 2, 3, and sometimes they arrive out of order. So maybe packet 1, 2 arrive, and then 4 and 5, and then number 3 arrives later. So they are reordered, and the headers are removed, and the message is kind of assembled again, and that's how datagram switching technique works. The point is, there are no storage devices, no external storage device. Everything goes into main memory and flies to main memory of this and flying to main memory. And main memory, electrons flow so fast, they travel almost at the speed of light. They're more than two-thirds of the speed of light. That's why you can send a message from here to India in 1/4 of a second. Actually, in fact, you can send it to the moon in 1/4 of a second. No, not to the moon, to the satellites. But so this is the tremendous speed in communication. This is really the breakthrough that happened in computer communication. You can send information around the world in less than half a second. And this is known as the datagram switching technique. As you can notice, important keywords is that wires or links are shared. They're not dedicated like the other earlier. What does shared mean? That means they can take 10,000 calls simultaneously. Packets from so many calls, from so many sources, they're going. And each router will take one and look at each packet. And remember, routers can deliver 1 million packets a second if they can forward. 1 million packets I can take from this port and put in this port, and the transmitters are working, sending away. So that is known as the datagram switching technique. Of course, it has advantages and disadvantages. Anybody can think of one advantage or disadvantage of this technique? Come on, guys, you're supposed to be revising this stuff, not hearing of it the first time.
The disadvantage could be because it's slow, because the links are shared.
Okay. So because these links are shared, it's going to slow things down. But initially, it's not slow. It's very fast. It's only when the sharing exceeds, goes too high. When we have too much communication, then it has a disadvantage. There's no limiting. A router never says no to a packet coming to it. No blocking. You cannot block packets, say, no, I'm not taking it. There's not in datagram switching technique. There is no facility or no power to a router to slow things down. And that's why sometimes you're sitting at home, watching a video, streaming a video, it works for half an hour, and then starts, slowing down, interrupted. And that's because too many people are using the network around you, and therefore delivery quality of service is dropped. So that's another word I want you to remember, quality of service. Quality of service is how fast packets arrive to you. Anytime you think of quality of service, think of videos. Why? Because videos, they need a lot of data and they need it fast. Videos require, like to watch a video, you're downloading maybe 3 gigabytes, and you need it fast or else you start, not enjoying, the quality drops. So quality of service, not guaranteed. It's good, it can be good, but it can be bad. So don't tell me there's no quality of service if you're asked. It can be good, but it cannot be guaranteed. You can start watching a video for an hour and say 20 minutes, and then the last 10 minutes you really suffer of slow delivery. Right, so that's how the datagram works. And the lines are shared, you need to remember that. Is sharing a line, which one is better now? Dedicated lines or shared lines? Which one is better? And why? Give me a reason why behind it.
This thing is shared.
This one is shared. Is that an advantage or a disadvantage? It's a bad thing.
No, it's a good.
It's good.
Yeah,
Good
it's
answer.
good.
But it's not the right answer. Sharing lines, is it good or bad feature?
I would say not it's a good one.
Why?
As if you're trying to send lots of information.
Because what?
If you're trying to send, like if you're sending multiple things to multiple people at the same time.
Yeah. But, okay.
And then when you're looking for cost or performance.
Right. So quality, okay, if we want performance, would you go for shared lines? No, because they get, why? Because the quality of service is not guaranteed. Depends. If you have more people sharing, then the quality starts going down. That's a disadvantage. But what's the advantage of sharing lines?
Speed of front end, sorry.
Price. Is that you're saying price? It's price.
I was going to say the amount
Cost.
The amount of people can just go share rather than direct lines. I agree with the girl over there.
Yeah, no, I agree with whatever. Yes, I agree with him too. But now I'm asking the opposite side, the other side. That's I don't know. The disadvantage of shared lines is quality of service is poor, cannot be guaranteed. What's the advantage of shared lines?
Price.
Cost, yeah. So they have high cost, right?
Well, no, directly.
They're low cost because more people can share it. Usually it's cheaper, and that's why the internet is supposed to be cheap. It's supposed to be. I don't know how much do they charge for internet connections now. 20 euros or so, 15 euros. It probably costs 2 or 3 euros, but that's what they charge. It costs.
Where do you get the internet for €3? I'd like to know.
No, that's the real cost, but the providers will charge you 20 euros. It doesn't cost them 2 euros. Or, in fact, some of them, it costs them almost nothing because they don't even have support people to come and answer phones, but that's another thing now. Now, this is what the computer companies did. How are we doing on time? Now, let's look at the other network technique, switching technique that's in use today, other than the datagram. The other technique is built by the telephone companies. Remember, the telephone companies, they used to use something called circuit switching. And remember with the datagram now, stay with me for a second. The datagrams, when you compare them to the old telephone systems used to have the call set up first. With the datagram, as you noticed here, there is no call setup. This is the internet technique. If you have a file to send to someone, take the file, break it into packets, build the headers onto it, and send it to the router. The router will never say no. And it will take it to that destination, just like the post system. You don't have to contact the other end first and say, listen, I'm going to send you a message. It doesn't exist here. There's no call setup. So this is a bit of saving in the time of call setup. Why waste call setup when you can send the data directly? So the datagram has this direct sending. There's no call setup involved. So is call setup an advantage or disadvantage? Now we'll talk about it later. So let's now go to the circuit switching. These are the telephone companies, that's the way they operated. Now there's better technology. How did they operate? So they said they still used what's known as circuit switching, but now they don't call it circuit switching, they call it virtual circuit. Virtual circuit switching techniques. What does virtual circuit switching technique? It means you still have to set up some sort of a circuit between the two ends. But it's not a real electric circuit as it used to be. It's virtual, just like virtual reality. It's not reality, but it's very close to reality. This one is virtual circuit. So this is how virtual circuits work. Let's say here's a network with few routers, and you want to send a file from this end, from a machine here to a machine there. Remember, routers don't usually exchange data generally. It's users sending messages or data to other users. Users are connected to routers. Every user has to be connected to a gateway. We call it a router, but sometimes they call it gateway. But anyway, so the virtual circuit technique, again, they don't use hard disks or tapes or external storage devices. They send information straight through the memory. And therefore, they cannot send big messages either. So even in virtual circuit, they broke the message into smaller packets or datagrams or whatever you want to call them, but they call them packets. They don't call them datagrams. Datagrams are really the internet people, they call them datagrams, but it doesn't matter to us whether you say a unit of data called datagram or packet. It's okay, it's acceptable. Now, but before you send it, like with the internet, you must send one packet, and it's called call request, call setup request. So you must call the final destination, say, I want to talk with you, I want to send you some message. So now, when you send that call request, so you put the source address, destination address. You need the destination. You need the addresses. So the router takes that packet and say, right, what's the best way to route this? I can send it to that router or that router. So I'll send it, for example, to this router. So now it goes, but before it sends it, on its memory, it has a table, like an array of how many calls, how many users can it handle, how many calls it can handle. Let's say 10,000 calls. It has enough memory, enough processing power, enough cables and wires and transmission capacity to handle usually 10,000 calls. It could be slightly less, maybe more. So it has a table of 10,000 and goes through it and say, these are all the calls that are running at the moment on this router. Let's say this particular user's name is A, or it could be an IP address, and wants to communicate with, M, whatever it is. These are IP addresses, A and M, just to identify us. Instead of writing a number, I'm writing it. So, for example, this guy goes through the calls, and it has a field here that's busy. This call is being in use. This is free. Find some location on the table, on the array. Let's say location number 36 is free to set up a call. So it goes into that location and say, okay, A is talking to M, or at the moment they're not talking. It's just at the stage of request. They wish to talk, and the request is going. And this is at location 36. This is going to be our virtual circuit number. So anything this guy sends, it has to put the number 36 on it. That's known as the virtual circuit number. So this one is telling you, I'm delivering you, it's like gate 36 or whatever at an airport or something, but that's the code number for this one. And this one sends it to this router. And this router also has a table. All these virtual circuit networks, each router has a table of all the calls that are running right now. So it searches right through. Maybe at location 88, there is a free channel, free entry into the table. So it says, yeah, I can take A to talk to M, and this guy came to me. If I respond to back, I'll put this number 36 to this one, but I found it in 88, so it will send to this one, say, your virtual circuit is 88. So to replace that packet that's going there, puts the number, listen, if you respond to me on number 88. That's where I have it stored here. And this guy also basically goes through each router. And if this router, for example, has 10,000 calls going through it at this moment, it'll say, I can't take you, right? So it can block a call, say, so this one, instead of sending to that router, it might, okay, you're busy, I'll try this router. So even though these lines are shared, but there is a limit on the maximum number of calls that can be accepted. Why? Because a router has enough power, enough capacity, enough memory to handle so many calls without any delays. So if any more calls come in, actually in those kind of virtual circuit technique, you can be blocked. It rarely happens, but you can be blocked. And why would you be blocked? So the router can guarantee the existing calls a good quality of service. So they actually guarantee a good quality of service. They don't allow the number of users to increase beyond kind of handling, being able to handle them. So in virtual circuits, they have built, these telephone people, they built their networks or their method of transferring data in such a way that will always guarantee good quality of service for existing calls. Okay, once one of them finished, they can take more calls, but each router will have a maximum number of calls. So even though the lines are shared as well, but they're not as shared as they are in the datagram switching technique without any limitations. Eventually, the call will get to the user here, the request, so that if the user can deny it or accept it. So this option is still available. You can't just receive any calls without your permission. So any data you receive, you first receive the request, the network will tell you somebody wants to talk to you, that's their number or their IP address or ID. And if you accept it, you change that request packet into an accept packet or deny packet, just a number, you change it in there and send it back. But make sure, see these numbers now are noticed. This is 88 to this one, this is 36 to this one, and so on. So it goes back, it follows the same route. And every packet that comes in, this router will say, oh, we had A requesting a call with M, now it's been confirmed, the call is already established. So, and sends it back, this guy also confirm it and say, puts it here, yes, now the call is running. And we notify the user. Once this user gets the okay, then he can send these packets. Break your message into packets, but now you don't have to put the source or destination addresses anymore. All you have to do is put the virtual circuit number. That's 36, 36, 36. But don't forget there'll be a sequence number. That's 1, 2, 3, and so on. So the receiver can. But this is like if you book a flight, this virtual circuit is like booking a holiday. For example, you want to travel to Turkey, right? You book a flight to London. You get on the British Airways, they give you confirmation, they give you a code. That's your code. They take your number, your passport details, everything. And the day you travel, all you have to do is produce that code. That code is like your virtual circuit number here. You don't have to, each time you go to the airport, they ask you what's your name. They just ask you for the code, they enter it, they have your details. So every router has the details of this, who is talking to. When you fly from here to London, then in London you go to Paris, you have to go to Air France, but they have a different code. That's like a different virtual circuit number. But every time you go from one place to another, you're given a virtual circuit number. You must carry that in your trouble. Now, all our packets will carry the same virtual circuit, and they'll all follow the same route. They're not allowed to change route. Like when you book a holiday, you book, say, for example, Dublin, London, Paris. You can't say, oh, London, let me go to Madrid. No. If the Paris flight has whatever, strikes, no flying to Paris, well then tough luck. The flight is cancelled completely. Your whole communication is finished. Unless, of course, this is the basic technique. In the modern ones, they say, okay, we'll give you a standby route as well, so you can switch to it. But I'm talking about the virtual circuit basic idea. So the basic idea, one route. You'll follow it and you get there. All packets, this has another little advantage. All packets will follow the same route. Remember with the previous one, with the datagram, the one the internet uses, packets can go in many different routes. That has a bit of a problem. They might arrive out of order. With this one, because they all follow exactly the same route, they're unlikely to arrive out of order. Most likely they'll arrive in the correct order. So this is called the virtual circuit. Why do they call it virtual circuit? Because you always follow this route and this is your circuit, and they said, well, that's like as if it's an electric circuit. It's not, but they kept the name. It's like like the circuit switching technique, but it's not really a circuit because these lines, they don't carry, they're not connected as an electric circuit in the older system. but they're still connected, and all the routes must follow, as with the older system, they must follow the same route, the same connectivity, the same link. And we still, even in this one here, we still have call setup phase and call data transfer, and then call clear. So whenever you finish, either party can terminate the call. They send a call clear packet, and all these routers, instead of the switch rotating, they just go to this party and they say, it's free, it's no longer busy. This is the entry in the table. So now someone else can use that entry in the table. So this is called virtual circuits on some networks, they still use this system. In fact, the faster networks, they guarantee a good quality of service of the networks, they use this. The internet uses the datagram switching technique that you don't have to call or wait for call accept, but the quality is not guaranteed. But still, the problem with this one, if this link breaks, then your call is terminated. You have to start a new call. With the datagram, it's more flexible. If this link breaks, there's no problem. This one will automatically send the rest of your packets on another route. So the datagram has more flexibility, but quality of service is poor. So these are the different switching techniques. Now, the question is, which one is better? If you just start a job and the company says to you, oh, we got two networks to connect, which one should we connect with or use? Which network should we use? We have a datagram switching technique and we have a virtual circuit switching technique. Which one would you recommend? You started working in a new company and that's your first task on the first day. They say, we don't know much about networks or computers. Now you're here. Can you tell us? Anybody wants to tell? Can you say something? Yeah, that's a good one. That's not the one.
Depends on what are the priority of this.
It depends on what do you want from this connection. Say again?
Of the priority of the company or what?
Yeah, very good. Give me one priority that you say, in this case, let's go for this.
Well, if we want quality of service, then we will go with the dashboard.
Yeah, so if your company depends on quality of service, we go for the virtual service. If you're, okay, let's say your company is an advertising company, which one would you go for? Why? Because it's more fast. The first part of your answer is correct, the second part is not.
It's cheap.
It's not, yeah, it might be cheaper. Why would it be cheaper?
Because it's shared link.
Because the link can be shared by more people. Even the other one has a shared link, the virtual circuit, but the amount of sharing is limited. You can maybe 1,000 people can share it, or 10,000, or the other one 20,000 can share it. And the more people that share, the more users instead of people, the more users share a link, the cheaper it becomes. So it's slightly cheaper, but that's not why, okay. Any other reason why it's better for advertising? Our company sends advertisements.
The company
Give them a chance.
the company doesn't need to send a call request.
Yeah, because in advertising, it's not a good idea to call somebody and say, I'm going to send you an advertisement, will you take it? Of course, they deny it. So if your company is into advertising, first it's cheaper to send millions of them, even if some of them don't get delivered, it doesn't matter, but like 90% of it will get delivered. But nobody will be able to refuse it. You'll get that advertisement, just like your email. You get tons of email that you don't want. And that's because it's not a call setup kind of, or virtual circuit setup. Right, which one is more expensive? Well, obviously. Which one is more expensive and which one is cheaper? The virtual circuit or the datagram?
The datagram is more expensive.
The datagram is more expensive. Why? Let me give you the reason. The number of users will decide. The more users you have, the cheaper it's going to be. So which one allows more users? The datagram allows more users. With the virtual circuit, because datagrams, they can never block any new communication or new call. with the virtual circuit, you can actually block new calls. A router can reach its maximum limit and say, I can't take any more, for the purpose to maintain a good quality of service. Quality of service usually means faster delivery, continuously fast. And usually the companies that require that are video kind of delivery companies. Because the moment you hear video on networks, it means lots of data and it has to be delivered fast. Because videos are very large and they need to be delivered reasonably fast in order for the receiver not to be interrupted. Same with, like, if you have a video call, it's better to have virtual circuits rather than datagram. Of course, the calls we have on Messenger and WhatsApp and all these, they go through datagram switching network. So if there are no number of users are low, then you get a good quality. The more users come into the network, they start not having a good quality. Any questions? No, good. Let me show you a couple of simulations I put together, so it give you some idea. Okay. I'm going to change the sharing. This one. Guys, do you want to share that conversation with us, or it's not worth sharing?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay. Okay, leave work out of this now. Right, let me go through this quickly. Switching techniques, they are the four methods or four techniques. This is switching, circuit switching. These are the old ones. One by computer companies and one by telephone companies. And then we have datagram switching. This is the new computer kind of company's way of communicating, and virtual circuits are the new telephone system's way of communicating. Of course, there was a big rivalry over the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and up into the year 2000 between those two companies. There still is. It's a big business. Communication is a huge business. And communication is on the increase all the time. Like with networks, even the wireless networks that used to be there, it's like studies that show that every year the increase is tremendous, the need for more communication, and hence the generations that keep coming up that can deliver more data. Anyway, so this is communication. It can be kind of messy, and there's there's some sort of connectivity that's known as point-to-point. That's networks. Well, we'll talk about these again at some other time, but the way you connect computers together, you either connect them like this, point-to-point. That means every computer, every two devices have a link between them. That link is dedicated to the communication of those two computers. You don't send information from this to them in order to send it there. You have to send it direct to this link. That's called point-to-point only communication. There's no routing afterwards. But then also there's this form of connectivity which is called a multi-point. I know that this looks a little bit closer to topologies, but This is the way to, so when this guy wants to send a message to that guy, everybody gets it, and they call this multi-communication. If this one wants to communicate with that one, everybody gets the communication. They all share this link, and multiple machines share it, and they call this multi-point communication. Now, which one is better? Point-to-point or multi-point? I'll start with you.
It depends.
Very good. Now, give me a reason why one of them is
You don't
better.
want to, like, let's say, a company, you want to, all the sectors to receive the message, there's no need to be point to point.
Okay, let me make it easier. Quality of service, which one would be better? This one or this one? For quality of service? This one, because the dedicated line, because if two machines have a dedicated line, they have the full use of that capacity of that line. But if this line is shared, then anybody who's communicating, they're sharing with those communications, sharing with this. So with shared lines, the quality of service drops. The more users share it, the less chance that you have of that capacity is allocated to you. What about cost? Which one is cheaper? This one in a company or that one? This one here, because the more lines or links or channels you share, that means the prices is going to be less. With this one, just cables alone or channels or transmitters. See how many cables you need to have for this one. There's a formula for calculating this, but it's the number of links is the number of devices multiplied by a number of devices minus 1 divided by 2. Again, okay, you should have known this, but it's probably going to be defined somewhere. Now, cost, we know this one is cheaper. Speed, quality of service, which one is better? This one or that one? This is point to point and that's multi-point. Point to point will provide better speed. Robustness, what's a robust system? Do you know what a robust system is? Anybody? What's the definition of robustness?
It's hard to take down. It's hard to take down.
A robust system is a system that will continue to work even if parts of it break down. There are systems that are not robust. That means they have a single point of failure. There's one part, if it breaks, the whole system stops working, right? Robust system is a system that one part breaks down, it will continue to work. Which one is more robust than the other? This one or that one? But with the shared link, if that shared link breaks, all communication stops. So that's not a very robust. With this one, if this link between 4 and 5 breaks, okay, 4 and 5 cannot communicate, but the rest of all the system will continue working. So that's more robust than this, okay? Scalability, that means grow. Scaling is growing larger. So having more and more machines, which one will handle more machines better? This one or that one? What do you think? This one, why?
Less connections.
Yeah, because of the cost and also possibility to connect. In fact, bus topology in this case or other topology, you can have 300 machines on a local area network. With this one, any more than 5, it becomes even impossible. Because remember, at the back of every machine, there have to be a link to every other machine. I don't know how many ports they have in the back of every computer, maybe 3 or 4. So you can connect from 3 or 4 other computers. Any more than that, it becomes impossible. The number of cables become just preventable. You know, they can't actually, and so on. So maintenance depends. Maintenance is how quick you can, fault isolation. Fault isolation, the problem with these, sometimes when you lose connection, you don't know where it is. It's very difficult to isolate. But with this one here, if there's a loose connection anywhere in any of these cables, only those 2 machines cannot communicate. So if machine 4 tells you I can communicate with everyone except number 2, so then you suspect the problem is in that link between 4 and 2. Easy to identify where the problem is. While with this one here, it's all like one electric circuit. And there's so many links and connections and T connectors and all that. One of them goes a little bit loose, not even disconnected. just a little bit loose, not making contact, all the communication stops. And it's almost, well, not impossible, very difficult to find out where the problem is. Single point of failure, any system that has a single point of failure in its design, it's a bad system. So that one, you can have one or two links broken, still the rest of them work. But with this one wire breaks and the whole thing stops working. Link utilization. Which one utilizes the link better? What's utilization? Utilization means use, the rate of usage of that, whatever it is, device. Let's say you have a channel that can deliver 10 million, let's take an airplane or a train. You have a train that can carry 200 passengers. You buy it and it's you or your dad owns it and you're real rich, right? And the train runs Dublin, Belfast, but can carry 200 passengers, but some trips it only carries 10 passengers, then utilization is poor. If you carry actually 200 passengers, that means your utilization is 100%. How much of what's available you are using or the system is using. That's utilization. Let's say, again, a bus or an airplane travels fly from here to London, it can carry 300, it has 300 seats, it's carrying 150 passengers. I mean, that's 50% utilization. So utilization is the ratio between what's available to be used, what's actually being used. The higher the better. 100% is the best utilization. So utilization here is the channel capacity available to you. If that each link can carry 10 million bytes of information, is the 10 million bytes here going to be utilized more, or or here you have 10 million this one, 10 million that, 10 million that. So with anytime you have dedicated links, only one user uses them, they might get great quality, but most of the time that user will not be using the link. It'll be sitting idle, unused. So utilization is very poor. Okay, anytime you have dedicated link, always think of those things. It's going to be expensive, it's going to be utilization is poor, but the quality of service is great. So always think of those terminologies to compare, links, networks, performance, things like that. And latency, security, which one is more secure, that one or this one? Point to point. Good answer. That's the wrong answer. Which one is more secure? Security here means if you send a message, can somebody read it, someone else get access to it and read it, and they understand it, and somebody, do you know who's calling you on the other end? In all computer communication, no communication is secure. The moment the information leaves your machine, going anywhere in the world, it's available to anyone who wants it. It can be taken very easily off the internet. The moment it leaves your machine, it's not secure. If you want it to be secure, you must do other things, like encrypt it or something like that. So none of them is secure. None of these systems is secure unless, of course, you apply other, even though you say, oh, but hold on, that message is only going one line to another machine, it's more secure. That's what you think, but anybody who wants to pick it up off that wire, they don't even have to touch the wire. They have sensitive equipment that they can park outside the gate of this college, and they can pick every piece of information going on the internet from this college. So, and this is a college. Imagine if it's a military kind of research department, or they're manufacturing some nuclear stuff, there'll be every other nationality sitting outside and picking up that information. You need to encrypt it or something like that. Latency is the delay. Okay, so most of the time it's the speed of delivery, how much time it takes, but also it can mean an initial delay before the data can be sent. So it depends. This term is used twice, with two meanings. Sometimes they ask you, what's the latency for this network? That means how long does it take for information to transmit, to be received. Another term, it's used the initial delay, initial latency. That means send my data. How long will it take before you actually send the data? Not deliver it, but it starts sending it. So with the datagram, there's no call setup. You send it immediately. There's no delay, no latency. With the virtual circuit, You must first send a request and wait for the response, and once you get the acceptance, then you can send it. So the virtual circuit has a bit of a delay. Now, that's not what I wanted to look at now. We can read these or look at them later on. This is what I want to show you. The message switching technique. This is the older way of transmitting data using computers. You take a file, you send the file, transmit it to the nearest machine, save it here. Once it's fully saved, you send a copy to the nearest machine. Of course, there's transmitter and receiver involved, but you need to save it. And it goes and gets saved. Eventually, it gets to the other end. You know now that this is a very slow technique, and it's no longer in use. And the main reason for the slowness is the external storage device, storage that it need, the message needs to be stored at. Nothing goes through main memory. Mechanical devices are very, very, very slow compared to main memory. Main memory operates so fast. This is the datagram. This is the development of the previous technique. They said we can't send any more large messages. We break them down to smaller packets. Why? So they can fit through main memory. We don't need any more external devices. And that's the major breakthrough, the speed in delivery. So this one here, they take the message, break it into packets, put sequence numbers, put addresses onto it, and send them. They could go in different directions, but they'll all get there. Sometimes when they get there out of sequence. Maybe this router might send packet number 1 that way, 2 this way, 3 that way. You might get packets floating around the network getting lost. Eventually they get there, but they're out of sequence. They need to be corrected. And remember, the headers need to be removed eventually, once they are put in the right order. Is this good? The lines are shared. It's flexible. Routing is flexible. And every packet carries its own full information to be delivered. Each router looks at every packet independently. It doesn't say, hey, we got a packet from this source before. We're heading to this destination. Let's send the same route. They don't keep any memory of that. Every packet, let's go and find where's the best, is routing table. It's like you go to a tourist company and you say, listen, I want to go to Paris. The person who works there doesn't know where Paris is, but they open a packet, they say, oh, Paris, you need to go fly to London and then Paris. So they direct you based on that routing table that was created. Okay, so let's go now to the virtual circuits. I don't know if no, this is the telephone companies. Telephone companies, I don't know, I have a video, it's not here, it's on the internet somewhere, so you can search for it if you like. It's called Circuit Switching Technique on YouTube. But this one is a virtual circuit. This is now the new technique that's used by the virtual circuit companies, where again, they break a message into small packets, but they don't send it like the datagram, here it is, they deal with it. No, they put it into, they first send a request, and each router will accept it or refuse it, and that plots out the route. This guy has to send back, I accept or deny the request. If it sends an accepted, go back, and each router now affirms that there's a call between A and B. Now A can start sending or B can start sending. Any message, break it in small packets, put sequence number in, but you're given a virtual circuit number. Each one of these packets has that virtual circuit number. You don't need source addresses and destination addresses anymore. And then whoever needs to terminate, they send a call clear. Is the route flexible? On this one, it's not flexible. At the start of the call, you've established the best route possible. And then that's it, it doesn't change. Sometimes this might be the best route at the start, but then a little while later, that's a better route. But we cannot change. With virtual circuits, you cannot change the route. You stick to the route that you established at the start. Which one is better? Virtual circuit or datagram? Yes, give me one reason. You say in this case, datagram is better, or in this case, virtual circuit is better. Or shall I give you the case? I'll make it easier for you. Right, I want
I can do it.
quality of service. Go on. Yeah.
So if you were on a video call, you want the
The datagram is better. Why?
Share time.
Yeah. Do you agree with them, guys? If you want to watch a video, use the datagram switching technique, not the virtual circuit. I see the majority here disagree with you. Why? Why do you think the other way? Why virtual circuit is better than datagram?
They guarantee the quality service.
Exactly, because it guarantees you a quality service. Datagram can be good, but it cannot be guaranteed. You know, 10 minutes later, things can really collapse on a datagram. Too many users join, and it happened before many times. In traveling, well, NASA, when they landed somewhere, I think it's one of their trips, I think on Mars or somewhere, everybody was watching. They told everybody, hey, it's gonna be televised, it's gonna be live, and everybody got onto the server, and there's so many people to the point that nobody watched it. Server got jammed. Too much traffic. So too much traffic because it's a datagram. If it was virtual circuit, it would have limited the number of users, but would have given a good. Right, so let me go through the others. I know you're in a hurry, guys. Okay. Answer 2 questions and go. Now, this is your question. Okay, catch it. In a datagram switching network, is a datagram switching network better or is virtual switch better for a user to watch a streamed video? Which one is better for watching videos? Datagram or virtual circuits? Virtual circuits, did you say? Yeah, okay. And the reason? It gives you a better quality of service. Which one has a bigger header, datagram or virtual circuits? Why?
Because it has source and address.
Because you have to put the source and destination address on every packet that's delivered. In the datagram, only in one packet, the request packet. After that, you only use small numbers called the virtual circuit. Which technique can block new calls? Datagram or virtual circuit? Virtual circuit is the only one. Virtual circuit and circuit switching, they have the ability to block. You can refuse a call. Right, I'll skip this one. Right, in which technique do packets get reassembled? Like you want to send a picture, you break it into small packets, send it, and at the other end, put the packets together, and you have your original message. Which technique does that? Datagram or virtual circuit? Both, yeah, both. All new techniques, they break a message. They never send a large file. They break every large file into smaller units and transfer. Right, which technique is more suitable for remote live video? Okay, but we've already, I think this is repeated. Which technique do successive packets from the same sender to the same destination follow exactly the same route? Which technique does that? Datagram or virtual circuits? Now, guys, I know I'm getting old and I can't hear as well, but you need to make. Okay, did you say datagrams?
For exactly the same route or for different?
To follow exactly the same route. Do packets in datagram follow the same route or in virtual circuits?
Virtual circuit, they follow the same route, and then on datagram, they may differ.
Yeah, okay, that very good. May differ, yeah, because some people say no, datagrams, they follow different routes, not generally. Generally, they'll all follow the same route, but they are more flexible, they can change. Right, you can look at the rest of these, when you have nothing else to do. I don't want to keep you any longer. Sorry for keeping you, but do I have your attendance sheet? Yeah. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next week. And if this recording works, I'll place it on Moodle. Sharing.